coordinated way.
That's my story.
Where is the light on?
How do I tell?
Okay.
We're on camera now.
We're here for the planning board meeting, Thursday, July 9th, 2026, at the multi-purpose room in the center on Chatham Street. Let's stand up and do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Board business, minutes of prior meetings. This minutes regime is going really well. We're getting them, like right away. Did anyone have any comments?
No, I was good with them.
Nothing.
Can I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve minutes of June 25th.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is planning board new member guide. Now, our new member, did you have a chance to look at them?
No, well, I looked at what I received
Yeah, the
like
Mansfield,
back
yeah.
in March and
Oh,
whatnot.
okay.
Nothing else beyond.
Okay, that's fine. You came up with a guide from,
Town of Mansfield.
Yeah.
Sarah does, Sarah Raposa, the planning director there, does a wonderful job of a lot of
Okay.
things. So we stole her format and added Littleton specific items. I think I'll take new off of there and just have it remember.
oh, that's good, yeah. Board member updates under this item, we had a request for a planning board input into a small group looking at data centers. And two people raised their hand, Margot and Daryl. And I guess and that's great, I'm glad. And I guess Mara just had a comment that as long as it's not something that has to have minutes and would you explain your concern?
Yeah, if it's a one-time policy meeting where you're just exchanging ideas with a member of the select board and a member of the LELWD, that's not a problem. If it's going to be an ongoing discussion, then consider having it be an ad hoc committee with as under open meeting law with agendas and minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I have some questions in terms of like what exactly they're looking at trying to do. And my personal preference would be is it sounds like this is coming from the Board of Selectmen, so I'd like them to take lead on this as opposed to, so if they need us for input, kind of view it as we can provide it as it goes along, but I don't personally see driving, creation of that, proposed bylaw.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's to develop a new bylaw, so it will be an ongoing discussion group. So I guess for it to be an ad hoc committee, what is that? How is that different? What is
You would have to have an agreement between the other people. They may just want to know what's going on. I mean, we had talked about having something as simple as allowing use schedule. And then can go all, forward to what conditions would. Anyway, so I think, why don't you assess what the feeling is that this, when you guys get together and then come back and we'll figure it out.
I have a lot of questions. I will give them homework.
I would suggest a discussion with town clerk. She'll guide you on question of whether it's a.
We'll see how the first discussion goes.
The next item is public input. Is there anyone here who has any comments in general? Okay, it having reached. Oh.
If I wanted to talk about a specific topic, would I talk now?
A specific topic that isn't on the agenda,
I think it's on the agenda.
then wait until that item.
Okay.
Yeah, because we'll take public comment. So it's past 6:35 and we have a continued public hearing scheduled for Bluebird Farm, 359 King Street. I understand Ms. Gould is here to ask for a continuance.
Just want to be sure we are on point. It's my understanding that Green isn't finished yet, and we had the engineer back from vacation. He hasn't had time to respond and interact with Green, so yes, we would like to continue for the next available meeting, please.
Our next meeting is August 6th. Do we want to even first again?
Yeah, 6:45.
Would that be okay with you?
Thank you.
Yes, if we do that at 6:45, that leaves time for another discussion before that.
Do we need to vote on this?
I'm on a, yes, to continue.
So can I have a motion to continue?
Make a motion to continue the public hearing for Bluebird Farm, 359 King Street to August 6th at 6:45.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
What did I say?
Aye. Okay, we'll see you
Thank you very much.
next month.
So do we not have a meeting on the 29th of July or whatever?
We
23rd.
have talked about it, decided not to.
Oh, okay.
I mean, unless you guys really want.
No, I can take the day off. I don't think it's
It is the summer and everyone before us is suffering the same slowdown.
kind of pale.
Okay, so we have a scheduled discussion on the ADU bylaw, after which we will vote to schedule to open a public hearing on a proposed bylaw. That was scheduled for 6:50. Since it isn't a public hearing, let's go into it now. So I'm gonna ask each of you to comment on at least the draft bylaw that's been circulated. And why don't we start with you?
I'm gonna interrupt just a second. So we do have Gwen from MAPC. She's the one that's been working with us
Okay.
all along. And Chris will be joining us shortly.
Okay. Thank you for doing this tonight. Maren had circulated our existing accessory bylaw with highlighting all the things that we couldn't do anymore. And I thought that was very effective because it was almost the entire document was highlighted. Wait, I guess that's the way to put it, unenforceable. So that was a starting point, and I just want to show, this is the sort of, the yellow is highlighting what is now unenforceable under state law. So back to you, Barb. Do you have any comments?
Well, yeah, I wanted to discuss the 1,200 square foot maximum size. I'm just wondering what our target demographic is. I lived in a 1,200 square foot apartment with 2 bedrooms that was very comfortable with that size. If the dining room was made into an eat-in kitchen, then you could get 3 bedrooms in there. And I'm just wondering if we really want ADUs that big. I don't know what really the target demographic is.
I share a similar thing that I would prefer that we go to the state 900 square feet, which seems to be a pretty robust, size for a ADU.
Just to share the reasoning with going 1,200 is that's what the current ADU bylaw allows. And it was well received at town meeting to support the 1,200 square feet at that time.
But my concern is this 1,200 is a pretty, you know, it's the size of a 3-bedroom ranch, which is pretty large for something to get dropped into, possibly in a backyard there, which then sort of starts putting it out of scale with, you know, the houses and stuff around, you know, the main unit and the other one. I know there's siting issues associated with whether you could actually do that, but it is, you know, if you drive through the Nabnasset area of Westford, those are all 1,000 square foot ranches built in the 50s. You know, so those are pretty reasonable size houses there. So that's why I'm thinking that 900 would be a better number. My recommendation for it on that.
So the other,
I think it has to be bigger because if you go to Costco to buy an 85-inch television for $300 now, you need a bigger room to put it in. You know? Having said that, my real reason is because everybody, I think 900 might be too small, 1,200. People are working from home now. You're going to have to accommodate the fact that there might have to be an office in there. It's not just a 2-bedroom unit anymore.
But the purpose of the bylaw is to provide, you know, more housing, not to provide home office space.
But people are working from home now, so maybe it does have to be. I mean, I don't care what the number is. I'm just saying the reason it should be maybe a little bigger is because we're doing some more stuff at home now. That's all.
That's fair, but I mean, there are tiny houses, there have always been studio apartments where somebody sets up like a work from home corner. I think, like to Bartlett's point, I grew up in a 1,000 square foot ranch that was a 2-bedroom. And then my grandmother lived with us briefly, and so it became a 3-bedroom, and it worked. And I think if it worked in the 80s, it could work now too, as someone who works from home.
I mean, I don't really care what the size. The big thing to me is that it has to stay in common ownership.
Yes, I saw that.
That's important.
I saw that in here.
So if you could provide the direction on what numbers board members want to use, that
so let's,
once we get to the hearing, we can
Yeah,
become more
when we get to the hearing.
so let's, well, no, Marin's saying that we should, at this point,
right, because once you get
come to a
Oh, I see.
consensus.
So
about
we're allowed to
size.
guide what the input is for the hearing.
Yeah.
Well,
I wanted to make sure process-wise.
The hearing could lead
Change
us
it
to
a
make
different
it
number.
bigger,
Yeah.
but,
cannot make it smaller. Once you get to the hearing,
We should start at 900.
so, is there anyone interested in 1,000?
Just let's.
I
make a
would
deal.
point out that 900 is, in the old days, was a HUD maximum for a 2-bedroom. And that was, a lot of housing was built under that, dimension.
So process-wise, if I say I'd like to propose that be 900 square feet, what do you need from the board to?
it's just consensus.
Yeah.
All right, I make a recommendation that it be 900 square feet. And then if you could pull the board, that would be what you would like to see as an initial draft.
And you're basing that on the fact that that's the state.
That's the state size,
Then we can't go
under 900 square
Do
feet,
we, when did the state set that standard?
just last year.
Okay, and then do we know what other towns that have implemented ADU bylaws, what square footage they've been hitting?
No.
There's been a variety. I can jump in. I've worked with some different municipalities. Some are doing 900, 1,200 is actually a pretty common number that we're seeing for people that want to put in a little bit more flexibility. And I would say the reasoning that we've also talked about doing 1,200 is just really, it's a pro-housing policy. It's a way to increase access to housing, different types of housing, and it's not that you can't fit a lot of bedrooms in 900, but doing 1,200 might allow for more families to live in an ADU, or different groups have more people living in a house. So that's what we're thinking about there with the 1,200 square feet.
And I understand that rationale, but given that this is by right at 1,200, I think, you know, the impacts on neighbors as you start putting larger ADUs becomes more significant there. If by right we go 900, but by right for 1,200, like I said, that's a healthy sized 3-bedroom ranch to drop into neighborhoods there, and that has to me a significant impact on the neighborhood. I know that, you know, while we can still meet the goals of providing more rentable housing at 900 square feet.
So have I heard from Kevin on this? Do we want, so the issue is the 900, can we agree on the state minimum, state maximum,
Right, the minimum maximum.
right, the minimum maximum. Now, my concern is that somehow in my mind, I have the image of these ADUs as being one story. And a 1,200 square foot, one story that's a big thing on your property. You're gonna have a driveway, and you know, I also
No, you don't have to have a driveway.
well, you have to have parking unless it's near the, you know, you'll have to have anyway. And then the other thing is, what about if they want to build a garage? What about if this? What about if that? And that has to do with, you know, does it have a basement? If it's 900 square feet with a basement, do we allow that? Does it have? I mean, there's nuance to this, which we can thrash out in the hearing.
Another term that I heard, and I think Acton is using, you know, I don't know their exact terminology, but is there some definition of habitable space that we could use in here?
Well,
Gross floor area.
Gross.
I'll let Gwen or Chris take that one with the gross floor area calculation.
well, that depends on our bylaws.
No, actually, that is defined by state law. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So that is, gross floor area is defined in the state regulations that were adopted last year, and includes the sum of the areas of all stories of the building, of compliant ceiling height pursuant to the building code, including basements, lofts, and intermediate floor tiers measured from the interior bases of exterior walls or from the center line of walls separating buildings or dwellings units, but excluding crawl spaces, garage parking areas, attics, enclosed porches, and similar spaces.
So it specifically excludes garages.
Specifically excludes garages, and that I think is primarily in there too, because we use gross floor area in, I think, two ways. One, for in the usual case, the gross floor area of the principal dwelling might matter for in terms of how big the ADU can be, because under state law, the ADU can be 900 square feet or half the square footage of the principal dwelling, whichever is smaller. So the exclusion of the garage in that definition is, I think, intended to keep the garage from counting for purposes of the calculation of the ADU's permissible size.
So they could build an ADU, then add a garage, but the garage doesn't count against the square footage allocated to the ADU. Right, but they can't convert that garage to livable space afterwards. What's our mechanism to make sure that that doesn't occur?
That would be handled by our lot coverage and setbacks and our other regular baseline dimensional requirements in the zoning bylaw.
Plus, it had to pull a building permit.
And the gross floor area, though, does include a basement, whether or not it is finished as habitable space.
No.
So
Sounded like you said it does.
Well, in Acton, what they do is they specify gross floor area by the height of the ceiling. State code, it's 7 feet or more is habitable. So if you do a basement that has a ceiling and you do this structurally so that it can't be changed, although they I think go down to 6, but there are ways I don't know, what are other communities doing to control this?
Right, I think back to Daryl's question about home is built, ADU is built, there's an extra garage somewhere that cannot be converted to part of the ADU because of the definition of ADU, gives it the maximum size.
Anyway, we probably need to make sure that we have that definition of gross floor area, but it's not in our draft right now, here. But it still sounds like, there's a loophole here, that if they built the garage doesn't count as part of the 900 square feet of the ADU, because it doesn't make that part of the definition, there. But I don't see any provision that prevents them from then converting it to a
They have
bedroom.
to pull a permit, and if
But
they
there's
added-
nothing to prevent them from adding on to the ADU.
Yeah, it does, they only have 900 square feet, so if it's 900 square feet, they try to build a building permit to turn the garage another 250 square feet to it, they can't pull the building permit, the building inspector hopefully would catch that and say, no, you can't add to your ADU.
So,
Yeah, I think it's fair, I think it's safe to say, I mean, the ADUs are protected in any number of ways under the new regs, but I think it is fair to say that you could not build a dwelling structure, ADU dwelling structure that contains 900 square feet, and then add a garage onto that ADU. That would not be allowed.
and the reason I bring it up is in the Meadows, whatever the 40B.
Wildflower Meadows.
Wildflower Meadows, you know, in their permit and stuff, it said no additions, but sure enough, they were going to the building department to get building permits, and I think they got several granted before the ZBA told them to stop it. I was a butter, I was notified of those hearings, I made sure that we had input on that, there, so I see it as a natural evolution of the process here, that, you know, that, I wanna be careful we don't have a loophole that could be exploited by people on it. I don't know if
I guess two responses to that. One, I can think about how to best defend against that scenario.
Okay.
But two, I don't believe state law would allow for the concern that you just expressed, Darryl. I think they get basically 900 square feet of living area in an ADU, and once that's constructed, the ADU doesn't allow more. Now, if that assumes, though, that by adding the ADU, you know, the residential lot has maxed out its, you know, the developable capacity of a particular lot. If you had a big lot with a principal dwelling, and so now I'm gonna go in circles. If you had a big lot with a principal dwelling, and the lot had plenty of available lot coverage, floor area ratio, wasn't close to any of the setbacks, etc., and they put it in a 900 square foot ADU, detached, freestanding 900 square foot ADU, and still had a lot of dimensional capacity to work with, you know, in that scenario, there's no reason why they couldn't put a new garage on the principal dwelling or elsewhere on the lot, I suppose, if the zoning otherwise allowed for it. So I think it seems to me that state law doesn't compel an ADU having a garage, but I can think about between now and the public hearing, I can think about how we.
because I know of a lot that's a sort of a corner lot, it abuts two streets, and the backyard is, you know, if you split the lot in half, it's two lots. I don't know who might that be, but I looked at their yard the other day. Again, it's not the normal case. It's my concern is the potential for abuse of the intent of what we're trying here.
I think that we can work on this definition, an enforceable definition of whatever maximum gross floor area we're going to put in the bylaw, but it seems to me consensus-wise that we're going toward 900. Is that the case?
For the initial hearing, and then
yes.
Do we have anything that specifies in here? I didn't read anything that made it clear that you can only have one ADU on if you have a very large lot,
That is.
or to that end.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't even understand why we are going to allow a second ADU.
That's for, in there for discussion.
Okay, one, okay, good, never mind.
Right, the state law allows for one protected use ADU on every lot.
Okay, so it allows for one, and then you could in your community say, we'll allow other ones.
Grant says a maximum of 2 may be allowed.
Right, when you get back to, where did we have it?
3D,
Yeah, 3D
or, yeah,
for discussion.
yeah, for discussion, we'll wait for it.
So this, and this says that we would be allowed as a special permit. Now, for the planners here, in our community, the limiting factor is going to be septic. And I just don't see even allowing a use case of a second ADU, even by special permit, is worth the trouble. But what do we think?
I don't think we should rely on the technology of septic systems to be the thing that influences our planning here, because that technology is constantly changing.
Well, that's a good point, but that is going to be the limiting factor almost always in town, even with one ADU. Anyway.
I was wondering about that too, because where it says here, including a provision for an appropriate reserve area on site or appropriate sewer service. As far as appropriate reserve area on site, would an ADU be tapping into existing septic on site? Because if a septic is sized based on the number of bedrooms in the primary dwelling unit, and now we're playing with the additional number of bedrooms, is that what happens, or do we require an additional septic
Well, it's a
system?
Board of Health issue, but in general, septic systems are provided based on the bedrooms and structure. And if you're adding bedrooms, you'd have to either redo the septic system or do a separate one.
But it doesn't preclude putting in a separate,
No,
So then
You
why
should
don't
have
we,
the room.
why do we not allow a second unit to make it?
I think when we get to that section,
I just don't think it's worth the trouble for.
I agree, I don't think it's.
The other big issue was common ownership. Our bylaw and the bylaw proposed states that the principal structure in the ADU would have to remain in common ownership. Now, we can talk about it I'm looking at you, Sherry, because you know, from the real estate attorney point of view, ownership isn't necessarily is a zoning issue. And let's go to town council and our other expert. You can condo anything, and zoning.
Talking to Chris, the zoning expert.
Let's talk, Chris. Talk about common ownership. How
Okay.
is that a
Okay, so-
realistic restriction?
So the language that you have in the draft that you're looking at tonight is not required by state law, but this is one of the areas where we can regulate if we want to. So the planning board should regard this section of the draft as optional, not required. And you were right, Jeff, that in almost all cases, zoning does not regulate the form of ownership. You know, if you've got a two-family allowed in a zoning district, it can be owned by one person, or you can condoize it and sell the two units in the two-family to two different people. This is I think this is an interesting and slightly different context than we're used to in sort of all of the other zoning practice that we do, where we say that you can't regulate form of ownership. And this is a little bit different because the ADU does have to be accessory to the principal dwelling. That's a fundamental component of what's being allowed here. And if you've got a principal dwelling that's 2,000 square feet and an accessory dwelling unit with 900 square feet, and they're both on the same lot and they're both owned by the same person, it necessarily follows that the ADU is indeed accessory to the principal dwelling, as in terms of how you think about it. If the two, though, are turned into a condominium or somehow subdivided and sold off to two different entities, it seems to me that you may be losing the accessory nature of the ADU as compared to the principal dwelling, particularly if they're owned by two different people that are independent and entirely unrelated. So I think there is the way we used to think about ADUs and the way we think about ADUs under current new I think it makes some sense for them to remain in common ownership to preserve the accessory primary relationship that's part of this relationship between the two structures. But again, that's me. That these comments constitute me, sort of doing some editorial thinking about this. Again, it is not required that you prohibit the conveyance of the ADU into separate ownership.
I buy your argument because I could see that if condoization occurs, then this relationship sort of disappears with the various owners who may not even understand what this original relationship was. And so the one owner and what had been the ADU goes, oh, I'm going to do an addition, or I'm going to do this, and then shows up and if the ownership is divided, then can they do whatever they want? I mean, this is why there is a reason to go into this common ownership issue, whether it's eventually upheld by case law. Sherry.
Through the chair to Chris, and just some thoughts that I've been stewing over for a long time now. I believe that clever attorneys are going to be able to condominiumize the principal and accessory into one unit ownership, being the condominium association, and be able to say to lawyers, to the public, to the town, it's still a accessory to the principal dwelling or the principal building because the condominium owns it all, and then sell one unit to each condominium unit owner. So I think it's going to be hard to draft legislation like that, Chris. Maybe there needs to be the addition of a bylaw requiring permission to condominiumize in this town, which Somerville and other towns have, so we can capture that problem. That's to me a primary problem if we don't want to have separate owners. The other side of that coin that's been troubling me a lot is that I'm having an awful lot of clients now as I age, aging with me or ahead of me, some of them behind me. But the common question now is, if my kids and I want to develop an ADU on this property, which we're allowed to do, what happens if old people die and the kids are stuck with this behemoth of a house or the ADU and no exit strategy? Or what happens if kids get a divorce and now parents are stuck with amortizing the cost of the ADU? So the argument runs both ways about whether to be able to separate it or not, because it could be an expensive proposition for a family who in good conscience and good faith were trying to create housing and then had no exit strategy for the end. And I think the board just needs to talk about those issues.
So I guess I wouldn't, Chris, you can think about this, but is there a way, if condominium ownership was allowed, is there a way of, in the bylaw, making the ADU status specific and not not able to go away. Because the other option is, you build an ADU, you should still be able to add to your home. The principal dwelling should still be able to be added to and altered and this and that and the other thing. But in the same way, the ADU may not. I mean, could we do it in that way, or?
So that is an interesting consequence of allowing the principal dwelling and the ADU to be sold into two separate condominium units. The principal dwelling, as you said, Jeff, could get bigger over time and be renovated, expanded, altered in any way that you would do to a normal single-family dwelling. The ADU, if it's built to 900 square feet on day one, could never ever get bigger. So if you've got 2 units in a condominium, it's a little awkward to have one that is amenable to expansion and alteration and one that is sort of stuck with the same footprint and square footage that it was built with in the first place. But I'm not sure that answered your question.
No, I don't like the last part of what you said.
One of the objections that I've heard, and from members of my board, the board, is that they envision this town becoming a 2-family town without a 2-family zoning bylaw. And I think we're already seeing it. I don't know what the proposals on the drawing board here are, but for instance, there's a proposal to build a 5 or a 7 unit new dwelling project, and maybe even as a open space. If that builder decides to build an ADU along with every one of those structures and condominiumizing is allowed, all of a sudden your 7-lot subdivision that you approved as an open space is going to be 14, whether you like it or not. Condominiumize each one as one separate condo and sell 2 units off. And that's something I just want you to think about. Obviously it's going to come up at town meeting. And just one other thing, I'm sorry to do this, to backtrack, Daryl, but your comment was about the garages being improved, and they will be. I mean, you can make livable space out of a garage without going to see the building inspector anywhere, and it happens. But the other side of the coin was, Chris said, square footage by the state is X square feet or no greater than 1/2 of the principal. And that may be a way to solve your 900, 1,200. 1,000 square feet or no greater than half of the principal might be the way to do it. But I also think I heard you say in discovering how big the principal is, you do count the garage.
No.
You don't count the garage.
You do not count the garage.
And you may you may count the basement, mini basements,
Many basements.
and you may have attic. So the principal structure, while not seeming large in this gross floor area definition, would. But the way the state says is that whichever is smaller. So a large principal structure does not mean that the ADU can be bigger.
That's correct. I like the smaller idea. The other thing is on the 1,200, 1,000, just for input, sorry to take so much of your time, but we found at the ZBA when we used to have to get permission at the ZBA for these things, what happened was a lot of people were converting the big barns, and the big barns were more than 1,200 square feet. And I think that number evolved because they didn't want wasted space in the barn. I don't think the normal creation of a brand new ADU structure came in at 1,200 ever. So just interesting food for thought.
And so I use for context, it's what happens elsewhere in the country and stuff like that. And yes, we got topology things, we got septic limitations, but we've seen in other parts of the countries where developers are building large things of housing there, and some of them are not being for sale, they're all designed for rent. So the concept of putting 2 on 1 lot is very appealing to them, because they're not there to sell it to somebody, they're there to just rent it and for income. And and I think in the general sense we think that's not what people are going to do here, but again, I just take the perspective we have to look at potential abuses of that system, and if we need to make exceptions in certain cases, for a barn conversion to it, we figure out a different process to allow the barn to be converted to an ADU,
But wouldn't that
as
give,
opposed to doing it by right, at that size.
wouldn't that give the CBA some future business, job security? I mean, seriously, if you have a 1,000 or 900, they'll come before the CBA for a variance to
It
that
also
number.
had, I know one specific, when I was on the CBA, where the proposal was to add on to the principal structure, and because of the percentage, they would then be allowed to have a bigger ADU, which is perfectly logical, but people were going, how's that work? So anyway,
Yeah.
so we have 4 things here. We have,
I had a couple other.
okay, but I'm just talking about we should come to a consensus on the maximum gross floor area. Come to a consensus on to allow or not allow a second ADU by special permit. We need to come to a consensus on common ownership to allow it or not allow it. There will be nuance in all of this, and then the final thing was no short-term rentals. Now, I would just mention that we did a quick survey about like a year and a half ago, and people weren't very exercised about short-term rentals. And, you know, granted the survey, who knows, you know, whether it was statistically valid or not to represent. But how do we feel about that?
I think the purpose of the state bylaw is to create housing, not rental, not short-term vacation rentals. So I'm opposed to deleting the short-term rental. I want to keep that in there.
Okay. Can we do that?
Yes.
And go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, one of the few things that we're allowed to do with ADUs is prohibit them from being used as short-term rentals, and that's perfectly consistent with the new state.
And as Sherry pointed out with the garages, that doesn't mean people won't do it anyway. But okay, so there's a lot of things that we can talk about at our hearing. But what Lauren wanted us to do is to hit on these 4 major issues to include in the bylaw for the hearing. And my sort of understanding of what we've been talking about is we don't want to go to 1,200, but is it 900 or 1,000?
I'd say 900, and we can discuss going.
Is that okay?
That's fine with that.
Okay, I'm fine with that too. Not allowing a second ADU. Sorry, Sherry, no business for you.
I don't want
I'll get you in a minute,
ADU.
George. Not allowing common ownership, to which we'll have to have
Must
Chris.
remain in common ownership.
Yeah.
Remain in common.
Remain in I apologize. Not allowing uncommon ownership, and then and not allowing short-term rentals. Now, there will be nuance. I think there's nuance in the gross floor area issue, but as I understand from the state has defined it in a way that I understand, there's nuance in common ownership. And so, okay, now, George, you had your hand up.
I had,
Okay.
while we have legal on the thing here, there's two clauses in here. In the first page, we have this protected use dwelling unit. There's the last sentence, an ADU that is non-conforming to zoning shall qualify as protected use if otherwise meets this definition. And then there's 3A2, which has language again about the allowance of the ADU, and then there's section 4, which talks about non-conformance, which seems to be the most clear of the sections there. So can we do something about either deleting these extra phrases about these other non-conforming definitions and just go with the one that's in 4?
Yes, I can attempt to reconcile all of that for a slightly revised draft that'll, circulate for your public hearing. And I will say that in the various drafts that we've been working on, there's some language that popped up in section 4, section dealing with non-conformance, that I think I need to work on in order to make it consistent with state law. 4B in particular, I think I need to work on a little bit more.
And
So that will be revised. There will be, because there is, the reality is going to be that non-conforming lots and existing non-conforming structures, in most cases, can have an ADU. So that they're.
I'm okay with them having an ADU, but the ADU needs to be compliant with the setbacks and not grandfathered under their existing nonconformities.
So that is not exactly how it's going to work. If a pre-existing structure is non-conforming as to setback currently, it can almost certainly be expanded or altered to contain an ADU, notwithstanding the fact that it doesn't meet our current setback requirement. There is language in the state regs that says that non-conformance is not a basis to deny an ADU. So,
Like I said, I'm willing to let them have the ADU on their property. It's just that the new structure needs to, like there's a poster child building I use on Russell Street that butts up right against the sidewalk. So if they technically built their ADU down the sidewalk, it doesn't extend the nonconformity. I can make
So
right. So
let's go back to the ZBA because this is a
no, this happened. This is
no. But I'm just saying that there is established case law on whether or not this can be allowed, and I'm confused because it was one way and then it was the other way.
Right, and I think if I understand Chris correctly, the new state law overrides that requirement. So there's nothing that Littleton could put in here that, a lot of negatives here, that would disallow what you hope to
Could
disallow.
it be done under a special permit so that there's some, because
For a second ADU?
okay, well, I'm just saying, just the background, the Board of Appeals allows neighbors to come forward and have their concerns met. And if something is allowed as of right, they won't be able to do that. So
what we can build into the bylaw and what I've built in other bylaws that we've worked on is what we call a Section 6 finding from the ZBA to authorize the expansion of a non-conforming structure to contain an ADU. The language that I use there is carefully chosen because what the Attorney General has said about ADUs is that we cannot require a special permit for an ADU, even if the proposed ADU does involve expansion of a non-conforming structure. What you can, however, require is a quote-unquote finding from the ZBA that the proposed expansion is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what is out there today. Many zoning bylaws, I'd have to double check Littleton's, you do those types of findings all the time for non-conforming expansions that are not related to an ADU. But if we want to do that here, it is important to sort of make a dedicated section calling this out and specifically labeling it a finding as opposed to a special permit, because if we call it a special permit, the Attorney General won't approve that section of the bylaw.
I think something like that's necessary, so it gives the ZBA's review of, expansion of a nonconformity is almost granted by right, as long as it doesn't extend the nonconformity. And
it's not detrimental to the neighbors. It gives the neighbors a chance to come in and weigh in.
but we need to make sure that we have a provision that we can have some kind of review on that.
Just what Chris said.
So I foresee, all kinds of weird situations where we're in our minds, I think a lot of us are thinking of these ADUs as separate structures, but many of them may be attached to the principal dwellings. And in that case, the extending the nonconformity is a big issue, because if the existing dwelling is nonconforming, you just, and that's established, and as allowed, to as long, you can't go beyond the nonconformity, but you can extend the nonconformity. So there are gonna be a lot of, anyway. So Chris, yes, I think we would like to direct you to do this finding thing. Sherry's excited because it's yet one more thing that, the ZBA can,
No, I'm excited to let the neighbors see
Yes,
what's happening.
absolutely, yeah.
But we need to make sure that there's a checkpoint in there
Yeah.
for those kinds of expansions.
Okay.
Any other comments from down the, okay, George.
Why couldn't you, instead of putting a fixed number, saying 900 square feet, why couldn't you say a minimum number up to 900?
The state law is 900. You can't go below 900. You can go, the state would allow you to go above 900, but you can't go below 900.
Okay,
Is that right?
Then it becomes half.
In the bylaw.
In the bylaw, yeah.
Then it becomes half of the lot.
Oh, okay, I might be wrong here. Let me clarify this. Our bylaw goes up to 900. Because we can't specify a number smaller than that. We can't say you can go up to 800, you can go up to 700, you can go up to 900. So, Chris, if you do the percentage, you can't, well, the percentage works. Could you do the percentage up to 900 or not?
If the percentage is, so under the state rules, if the percentage calculation results in a maximum ADU that's 700 square feet, 700 square feet is the maximum for that. It's 900 square feet or half of the area of the principal dwelling, whichever is the smaller number.
Right, okay.
So
Yeah, it becomes the maximum.
me going back to my 3-bedroom ranch, if you have a 3-bedroom ranch of 1,200 square feet, the biggest ADU you could build is 600 square feet.
Correct.
Under the state law, that's not what's proposed here.
Hmm.
Under the state law, that's correct, but that's not what's proposed here.
We're
Here's
allowing 900
straight
by right.
900. Up to 900.
And that sort of makes sense to me, because you could just add to your, to your ranch to the degree to which you could get the 900. Anyway, does that answer your question, George?
No,
Well, so I'm just thinking, you talk about having 2 ownerships as a possibility as well. Then, to me, I don't think lots in Littleton is that big that you can put, first off, 1,200 square feet in there. Like Lauren said, that's another ranch. And I'm looking at how many lots in the town that you can put this in like that. And I think you got a cluster that's going to take place, even though they want to increase housing. But I think that the opportunity is that some people want to do it. Let's say they want to just add an ADU of 1 bedroom. I mean, why couldn't they do it?
They can. That may be all that they're able to do on their lot.
Right, the homeowner can build an ADU that's smaller than 900, but the bylaw can't be approved with a maximum. Is that right? That's under 900.
Right. We have to
And if
allow
you do
up
the
to
one-
900, but people can build less.
but you can also do 1/2 of the existing dwelling,
No.
Yeah.
whichever's lesser.
Oh, whichever's less.
Yes, and I thought we had that language.
We did in the last version, this one.
I'd prefer if we had that language back. in.
I
haven't
don't
heard
know
that.
if I agree with that.
Okay.
Because why would you preclude? I don't know, I just don't. I don't know, it just doesn't seem right that if you have a small house, you couldn't do an ADU.
I think it goes back to what Chris had said, that it's supposed to be an accessory to the principal dwelling, not
Yeah.
something that looms over the principal dwelling, because principal dwelling was small, but now you're building something. I think if we want to attempt to legislate maintaining aesthetics, to increase housing production while preserving the character of Littleton's neighborhoods and protecting property values, I think this is the way we do it, to say, you can build something new to increase housing density, which we need, but it shouldn't be, it needs to be in an appropriate scale to what's already there.
I'll buy that. I will also note that, but I think we could maybe allow by special permit or finding, or special permit, finding is non-conforming, by special permit, a larger structure than what might, if you have a 900 square foot house and you want to build an ADU and you wanted to build a 600 square foot ADU, would that be so terrible under special permit?
If you do a special permit, you have to allow 2 ADUs, like Chris was talking about earlier, that you cannot
Okay.
have a special permit of the protected use ADU. So if you wanna do that, you can, but it would have to be a second type of ADU.
Okay. But I would like to point out in terms of the aesthetic point of view is that we state law says that the ADUs have to be placed on the lot in the same, with the same setbacks and height and lot coverage as the zoning district that they're in. In our present zoning bylaw, a accessory building can be closer to the lot line than the principal structure. And so part of this would be to change that from 10 to 15 feet. Because now an ADU could be as close as 10 feet to the lot line. Which, that accessory building number was for sheds, possibly garages, and not for dwelling units.
So we'll have to do that under 2 separate town meeting votes.
Yeah.
Because ADU would require the simple majority, change in the setbacks will require this.
Can I, again, sorry. If you have an existing garage and it makes sense for me to convert that garage into housing for my, I don't know, stay-at-home daughter who never got a job, why wouldn't the 10-foot be okay with that? I don't have a problem with that.
Well, that's the whole thing about the finding, because it's non-conforming.
But so I'm gonna build one now. You've already said it's okay
You're
for
gonna
garages.
build what?
A detached ADU
Okay,
or detached garage.
well, you can build a
Right now, it
detached
lets me
garage.
do it within 10 feet of the sideline. What's the difference between a small ADU 10 feet from the sideline and a garage 10 feet from the sideline?
The neighbors. It's a difference to have a garage next to your house and your bedroom window than to have another. And it's just the development pattern of our town. It's just, we're not that dense.
And going back one time to the 900 or half of the square footage of the other, and you said special permit, and the advisor said no special permit, but.
Well, she said
can't-
yes, special permit, but then we'd have to allow a secondary.
But can't that bylaw can read 900 or 1/2 of the principal dwelling, but a variance could be granted to go larger than 1/2 of the principal dwelling.
That's what I would think, I would like to see.
That's what I'd like to see.
Is that Gwen and Chris
Specify
is that to go back to the language.
Okay, so let's
Okay, what do our experts say?
So I think as long as we're allowing up to 900 square foot ADU by right, I think we could, so yes, I think someone could apply for a variance of the 900 square feet and just try to build a bigger ADU.
No, not for the 900 square feet, for if we went to the language of half of the principal dwelling.
Up to 900.
Up to 900 square feet.
100 or the lesser
Yeah,
of
whatever the state
50%
language
of the
is.
principal dwelling. If that lesser ends up being 600 square feet, but the applicant wants 700 square feet, the lesser is 600 square feet, I think by variance they can get the 700.
As long as it does not go over 900. So,
As long as we're not denying a building permit, should they ever decide to simply just build the 600 square foot ADU. Like it's the.
no, they
the
would
by-
be able to do that by right.
Right, as long as the by right use is protected, I think they could get creative in terms
So
of their.
that would add in the half.
So do we have consensus on that?
What do we think
Because
about
that's
that,
not-
guys?
not- What do you want?
I'm in favor of it.
I don't think you gain anything by making it. I don't care one way or the other, but I don't gain anything. They're just gonna be smaller than 900 feet, which we're okay with.
Well, the Margot's
No, we have
argument
language
was
that
the
we have.
aesthetic, basically a 900 square foot ADU next to a 900 square foot ranch house.
Then it's no longer an accessory
Accessory.
dwelling unit, it's we've got two houses on that lot now.
And why don't we just put in the language that it can't be that ADU can't be bigger than the accessory dwelling, and leave it at that. Can't be more than 80% of the size of
Bigger than
the
the principal.
principal dwelling. That way we don't have to do half of this and be math whizzes and everything else, just say we can only be 75% of it being bigger than 75 or 80% of the principal dwelling.
I mean, it seems like that would take care of most exceptions that we might see.
But the other
I'm
thing
in
is just
favor
to
of-
allow you just do the half and then allow a variance
Yeah,
process.
I'm in favor of using the language the state already has written, because that's less likely to get contested. Because the state already has language that says half or 900,
The smaller of.
the smaller of the two. That's already written by the state, so we're not inventing new
But then
language
we
there.
would,
No,
but
we
then,
can go
but then
larger.
would you like to allow a variance process if,
I'm okay with the variance process.
yeah, it's not gonna go above 900.
But the variance process should go both
You
ways.
don't, we actually don't need to include a variance process in the bylaw if that's what you're attempting to accomplish.
Okay,
Variance, anyone can apply for a variance at any time of anything in the zoning bylaw, and they're rarely granted, but.
well, except
we
for
don't-
Sherry's.
Well, no, but that gives the ZBA to say that, wait a minute, that's out of proportion with the thing here, not consistent with the neighborhood. And those other checks that we can't put into the ADU bylaw.
There's no need to put that in the bylaw.
Right.
That could-
So,
just leave it to the applicant
so
to go
then
and
this
do what they want to do.
consensus is that we add back in the half, the 50% of the principal. And the state, I presume, would define, because they have these definitions of gross floor area that would come under that. So, because we have the rest of the meeting.
We were able to consume that time.
Yeah,
Great.
we're beyond our schedule here, and we have sort of a step, yes.
I just have a quick question, it's more for Warren on the common ownership. You said the 900, you can't go below or change, right? Once you go to the public hearing, what's the rules on the common ownership? If you're at the public hearing, what can and can't be changed at the public hearing on the common ownership versus what's in here now?
So in general, you can become more permissive in the public hearing process, you can't become more restrictive.
So we're assuming that the restricting common ownership is the restriction. Okay, so we will have a hearing on this. Everyone who's here interested in this matter can come to the hearing. Can we schedule? Well, first of all, we need a vote. Can I have a motion to vote to schedule a public hearing on the ADU bylaw?
Make a motion to schedule the public hearing on the ADU bylaw.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? So what
So we're gonna shoot for the September meeting.
Okay, and why don't we put that, do you wanna put it first, or do you wanna leave
We'll
room
see
for
how it
something
shakes out.
else? Okay,
whatever applications
So
are
we
in.
will take up this matter as a public hearing. It'll be advertised. Please come, everyone. It's well, there's not a huge amount of a huge amount of, most of it is taken out of our hands by the state, but there are the things we've discussed today that are in our purview. Okay, next. Item number 4, as we've passed 7:15, is a public hearing, 410 Great Road, affordable senior housing, site plan, and stormwater permit. And Morgan, we're going to present?
Yes. Thank you. I think we need to be let in. Oh, yeah, that would be great.
So you can do it. I have faith.
No, Mark.
No, we want you to go over.
That's not your
thing
job,
that
Mark.
She's done
Public
such a
hearing,
good job with
stormwater
it.
management plans, permit plan 410 Great Road, affordable senior housing. The Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, July 9, 2026 at 7:15 p.m. in multipurpose room 1 in the center on Shattuck Street, 33 Shattuck Street, to consider a stormwater management permit application under Chapter 38 of the Code of Littleton and site plan review under Littleton zoning bylaw, Section 3, Article 31. Property 410 Great Road, Assessors Maps U9-23 and U9-28, owner of 550 King Street LLC, applicant is TEC Inc. and property owner. Proposed project is phase 1 of the redevelopment of 410 Great Road and proposes 86 units of affordable senior housing. Applications and plans can be viewed online in the planning board page of the town website at littletonma.org or the planning board and town clerk's office during their business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed work should provide written comment to the planning board office or attend the public hearing. Any questions, please contact the planning board office, phone number or email, signed Margot Livingston, clerk.
Okay, Morgan.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Morgan Pearson with Lipoli Companies, proponent this evening. We have several site plan submissions to the board this evening. Before I jump in, as I like to do, I'd like to just mention a few team members that are here. You're going to hear from others tonight. It's not just me. Thankfully, Chris Raymond, Alex Seller from TEC, Dave Snell, your last name, from PCA. We also have Mike and Mary DiDonato from the Lipoli family, and a huge part of this project. And hiding in the back, as always, is Gary Armstrong, our head of construction. I did want to, that was a really interesting conversation on ADUs. We won't go back into it, but I think someone mentioned wanting to increase housing density in Littleton, and I think, as the board knows, that's a big mission of this project at 550 King Street and 410. So I feel compelled to emphasize that. And tonight, one of the submissions, of course, is speaking directly to that in terms of housing. So we're pleased to present tonight the several applications, as I mentioned, which are outlined here. Affordable senior housing, which is a really important and big deal. Key retail and anchor retail for the 550 King Street project, and the relocation of the historic Tuttle House. I think when I first presented to the board a couple of years ago, I don't know if I would have ever imagined that we would have a meeting like this with these pieces all in one place. We're talking about moving a historic building that's super important to the town, providing affordable housing almost all at once and front-loaded, and of course looking for approval for a key element of the retail that will help unlock that really important element of the project. As we've talked about in the past, I did want to start with an estimated timeline and update for the board about the project, some of which you've approved already and some of which we're working on as we speak. Don't know how legible that is. The other announcement is that Chris gave me a laser pointer, so that's going to be a problem probably. But
hopefully we don't have any cats.
Not much has changed here, and I'll let the board. We've shared this, and you can go through it. But pretty much where we have been in the past. These are the top three, which the board has already approved for site plan, and then I've inserted what we're speaking on tonight at the bottom here, and just made some assumptions, but they're placeholders for the sake of conversation. Happy to come back to that. I did want to just pause on this master plan in the context of the timeline and also the importance of what we're presenting tonight. So we are, of course, talking about what we're calling 1900, 600, 800, and the Tuttle House. And these are really sort of phase 1 of 2. And I know we throw around phases a lot, but of a greater project, which we're trying to come before the board as soon as possible, which is on this white box here, which we've labeled as 1000. But these elements are all really interlocked, and it's important, I think, to emphasize that to the board. Interlocked in an economic way. This anchor tenant is vital and really a cornerstone to really attracting and accelerating our retail effort within the village that has been partially approved by the board already. I can speak to that, and Mary can as well, but really as we speak to tenants and capital partners, having an anchor tenant like that is just critical to signing new leases and bringing more people on board. Equally important is that we wanted to be before the board as quickly as possible, especially in relation to the affordable senior housing. If we could have waited until fall and really submitted all at once, with including this 1000 parcel, but all of these pieces, really 1000, this bank that we're going to talk about, as well as this anchor tenant, all function as a catalyst for the retail, but also generating revenue and income and showing the viability, economic viability of this project to help justify with our financial partners the tremendous investment that is what we're trying to attempt here with the nonprofit senior housing partner at 1900. So I may have mumbled through that, but really this whole section here unlocks what's going on over at 410. And so I just wanted to it's a good visual, and that's why I demanded my laser pointer, but that's hopefully, that's clear to the board, but that's something we wanted to emphasize. And happy to talk about that more. This is a map you've seen before. I just wanted to illustrate, how we've been thinking about the elements here being presented this evening. I didn't have time to label these, but this is the anchor tenant back here. There's King Street. This is the Tuttle House, and this is the bank, and this is the affordable senior housing over here. Just shows kind of the location as it relates to the form-based code, which is within that blue outline area. So, as the agenda says, we'll start at 410 Great Road. This is something that we're of course very excited about. We have been working on really, really hard. It is a complicated, lengthy, and very difficult process, and we're happy we've gotten to this point, but of course there's a long way to go. It really stems from, and I think it's worth mentioning this evening, dating back to really the beginning of this project, before my time, but not before others here, where it was clear to the community, to the board, to the select board, to others within Littleton, the importance of bringing senior housing to this town, and not only senior housing, but affordable senior housing. As I've been more involved recently, it's become clear, I think, in interactions with the board and the community, that there was a strong desire to what I would say sort of fast track or front load or bring on the affordable housing sooner than is outlined in the town's bylaws. And I think we have made a very good faith effort to be responsive to that request from this board and this community. Even having received a letter from the zoning enforcement officer saying that we are within our rights to sort of follow the path within the bylaws, we have really pivoted pretty strongly and put a lot of resources within our network and within the state level to find a really, really, really strong affordable senior housing partner. Some of you have spoken to them. That is a really exciting partnership, I think, not only for the Holy Family, but I think the town as well. And we've heard that from this board, and we appreciate that feedback as well, because we're excited as well. So I'd like to also just provide a refresher or a reminder. This was, and I won't go into the history of us acquiring the site, although I'm happy to if anyone needs a reminder, but really this was approved back in 2022 for 285 units. And at the time, that was achieved through a six-story building with a 4-story element along Great Road, and that's shown here. This is from the approval. It has the 10% affordable and the required parking spaces. Again, just a reminder, it was there. Also, I would also point out that we've been faithful to locating some open space, and we'll speak on this later in the honoring the United Elastics company that was at the mill many years ago. Here's the updated master plan, just illustrating what we're talking about. We have since, again, under the heading of a lot of work to get to where we are, we've bifurcated the site, and we've introduced this new kind of concept here where we can fast track the affordable component, a big portion of the affordable component of the project. So I'll have Dave come up. His team has been working side by side with our affordable senior housing partner to design this building.
I like it. Make sure I know what I'm doing. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, board. It's nice to be back with you. I had a nice little break from some of these, but good to be back in Littleton for this. And we're, as Morgan mentioned, we were really excited about this building and really finding a way to bring this critical use, to the project. So to give you a little bit of context for this building, Morgan mentioned bifurcating the site, and that preserves the ability to, bring more housing in the future. And we have, and I think you all know, as you drive up Great Road, there's a ton of grade change on this site. It's an extremely complex site. And so the way in which we've situated this building works within that grade. It expresses itself along the ground here in the foreground, and the grade continues to raise up, and it kind of buries itself into the hill for the first story. But maybe more broadly speaking, just about the building as a whole, we have a 5-story building. Portion of it here in the corner is 4 stories. And we have worked within, the spirit of the form-based code here in many different facets of the design. I think what you see here in the facades, a lot of movement in and out. You see different roof lines. You see a materials palette that is, and design elements that are all born of New England traditional architectural design language. Not only are they pulling from those references and many of the forms we see in the form-based code, but they're also pulling from the history of this site. Old photos that we've seen of the building, the palette, the reddish hues that we're using here is pulling from the brick on the historic building, the charcoal colors, pull from some old photographs we saw of it in earlier years. The divided light windows that we've brought in are referencing that, the windows up in the peaks of the roof. So we tried to pay homage to the history of this site with being inspired by it, and bring some of that character through. You'll also see we're using different textures in the materials and subtle differences in the colors, and we think all of this really helps to create movement in the facade, help to break down the scale, as we have a long building. I think it's also important to remember when you think about how the building is viewed, there's what it's going to be viewed as today, but then there's the future in which, not all of this building will be readily visible as you drive up Great Road. A lot of it will be obscured by buildings in the future. And so we paid a lot of attention to, to create this step down and to focus a lot of our energy on how this meets Great Road. You'll see here on the end of the building, large 8-foot setback between the masses. All of the, dimensions are born from the primary maximum dimensions in the form-based code. And we are, we also using some of the frontage types like the gallery typology, which you see here fronting on the Elastics Park, that is a 6,000 square foot open space at the front door of this building. We also have another gallery, covered outdoor space here, adjacent to the entry of the building, which has a large canopy that we've extended out to, provide more cover it's adjacent to a drop off there. So again, working with our affordable senior partners, thinking about the residents and the people who will live here, trying to make sure that you have a welcoming environment, through and through. And these are some tactics that we've used when we've worked with them in the past. Other things to point out in this view, at the top here, we have some outdoor space accessed by some small interior amenity space in the building. And, it's great to have, just another element of outdoor use for the residents of this building. All right. So the ground floor of this building, and I'll probably pop back to the rendering in a moment, but the ground floor is the large communal gathering spaces for the residents of this building. So 86 units in here, and when we do projects like this, how you create this area of community is really critical. This kind of space has multifunction rooms, it has fitness uses, it has a hair salon, it has a small residence market, it has offices. A lot of these things that are tried and true to, creating residence communities and building relationships in and among the people who live here. So the entire first floor is dedicated to that, and it, has a small amount back here of covered parking as we kind of extend the building out. That's where our accessible spaces are. So our most, our residents are protected, getting out of those spaces, and they have plenty of room to move in and out through a secondary lobby here. The primary vestibule entry is here at the center. At the second floor, we've included, and this is typical residential floor. However, at the second floor, we've integrated exits on either end to allow for a walking loop. So this is something that we try and do in a lot of our senior projects. The folks who live in these buildings love to walk with one another and to have a nice way to do that inside, do that outside, connecting through. And so we've integrated that here, and that can provide connectivity off the site as well. But taking advantage of that grade change that I mentioned before, this is a really nice amenity for the residents. Other thing to note, we have laundry on every floor. Those laundry rooms become, again, other points of gathering and socialization. And we've centralized the core here. That minimizes the walking distance required for all of the residents. So these are the kinds of, these are subtle design moves, but they're important to consider making this a building that's extremely functional and welcoming for the seniors who will inhabit it. And when you come back to to how the building sits on the site, we feel like we are shorter than the approved height. We are, 1 story less than what Morgan mentioned. We still integrate a step down, and by really pulling in some of these setbacks and the movement along the facade, the subtle changes in the materials, we think we're bringing forth a lot of the spirit of the form-based code. And how it would relate to a building of this scale on this site, and and how this park and how it fronts on the street, we think is a really nice thing. As you're coming up the street, it's going to be really welcoming. So with that, I will pop it over to Alex. Finish this up.
Hi, Alex Heller, TEC, did the civil for the project. So as Dave mentioned, we like to emphasize for the senior use, we like to have loops around the site, and he identified 1 second floor loop, and we also have that you can see that utilizes the front of the site. That's a bit of a longer loop that goes and even utilizes some of the frontage along Great Road and into the Elastics Monument Park. And that's at the top right of the screen here of the building. And just to highlight a couple other features of the parking area, we have we try to keep it relatively simple and efficient layout for this this use, and we have a loading pull off in the front entry area, so you can see about in the center of that main drive aisle. Use the laser, right? Fire the laser. And so here's the pull off right here, and then along, so we have also two access points along, one along Great Road, about across the street from the entry at 550 at the 550 King Street development, and then again accessing King Street at the bottom left of the screen here. So we try to maximize perpendicular parking, and wide drive aisles, and even have, as Dave mentioned previously, we have this area that houses about 14, 15 covered spots, including some additional accessible parking. So as we mentioned about the United Elastics Monument Park, we envision this to be a mix between movable and fixed objects that provide shade, tables, seating, and additional area for congregation for an outdoor amenity space to be used with the senior housing facility, as well as dual combined uses with potentially reusing some features of the existing building that we haven't fully vetted this yet, but our vision is to utilize maybe some of the brick along that frontage to incorporate into the pavers or some of the features on here, or if there's something that we can find through the process of reviewing that existing facility to be incorporated as a monument in this area, that would be our vision. And also a fun feature of this park is that it's angled in size to the degree of that building at that location, so that shape is actually sized to that building, and
it's like a shadow of the old building that's being replicated on the ground.
Exactly. So we thought that was a fun and creative way to pay homage to the historical use here. Quickly, I know this is a bit of a busy shot here, but this is another site view. You can see in blue, I know this is kind of technical, sorry, but just really wanted to highlight that we are in the Aquifer Protection District. We are upgrading this site to be up to current stormwater code as is required, but it does just show the emphasis of the infrastructure that we're installing and investing to get our groundwater recharge, which is incredibly important in this district. Skip one here. Again, another technical plan here, but we tried to put some color to this. Here's the utility connections that we intend for the site. A little bit challenging to see on this projector, but the intent here for sewer is to come out of the center point of the building and go down Great Road and headed to 495 at the top of the screen, and connect to a municipal or private. We're still working with LELWD on a municipal pump station that could potentially be at that location, and then come up on the left-hand side to connect to there to be a force main connection to the main along King Street. And then also on King Street, we'll be pulling gas and getting water and electric through Great Road. And at that point, I'll hand it back to Morgan to field some questions.
Yeah, we're excited to hear from the board. Happy to hear from the board. Before we open it up in the community as well, I wanted to express a little bit of gratitude, or some sincere gratitude, to some people who have helped us get to this point, because this has happened relatively quickly, despite months and months of effort. But Marion here is here from the Affordable Housing Trust. She and Margaret were able to join us on a tour of one of the facilities of this affordable senior housing partner that we're working with, and I can't overstate how meaningful that was to them to have members and leaders of the community drive to Brookline to tour their property, to understand what their organization was about, ask really intelligent questions, and continue to engage with this group. We are moving very quickly for them, but only because of the response from this board and from this community. And I think we'll continue to be blown away of how quickly we've gotten to this point. And I think a lot of credit goes to some of the people I just mentioned. So I think it's important to say that. And the other thing I meant to mention is, as we look at this project, not only in the context of Littleton, which I think is very, very large and meaningful in terms of creating and delivering ground up affordable senior housing, but even for the state of Massachusetts, this will be one of the largest standalone projects of its kind, especially when we're talking about the deeply affordable element. So I'm not patting myself on the back or our team, but I think this partnership, which is sort of a three-legged stool, it's this board and the community, the Lipoli family, as well as our affordable housing partner. It's really something that I don't want to jinx us because we have a long way to go, but I think it's really to take a moment and appreciate that. So with that, would love to hear from the board and anyone else who'd like to speak on this.
Let's just go down the line here.
Well, one of my sort of random thoughts is that I'd like to see the shape of the roof from King Street. I'm just wondering about that gable and how far that ridge goes, because that's going to be visible from the common. I generally don't think it's a good plan. I think that it works for the site. I have a lot of questions about affordable units and how that's going to work with the other affordable units that are going to appear on the rest of the site. I mean, it's 80 units. How many of those are deeply affordable? How many of them are other price points? So,
I can answer that for you because we had a meeting a couple of days ago, and consensus, the talk was that all of them are going to be deeply affordable, and they're going to be in the 30 to 60% range. Is that?
That's our understanding as well. I mean, I think,
amazing.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. But I think that our partner is also looking to see if they can expand that up, up to 80% on some of the units, and but that's an ongoing conversation. And unfortunately, because of the processes I'm learning in terms of getting additional funding from the state, that's something that they just can't commit to right away. But certainly the 60 to 30, which is really great.
And I will say that you partnered with probably one of the best senior housing opponents in the state. They're top notch. They do a great job. Everybody I've talked to about them, and yeah, when they came, had a little meeting here. I was here. Myron was there. 30 to 60% affordable for 86 units. That's 20. As I've said before, and I'll say it again. 25 years I've been sitting here, and the seniors have all been here. This is the best thing that has come through the door, and I'm ecstatic that we're on the forefront of it. And the reason we're going so fast is because if there's money out there, Littleton wants to be the first one to have their hand out to get this, so that we can get this project in the town of Littleton. It's desperately needed for the seniors. I just think it's great so far. I think we should go faster, but you guys do a great job. Great job.
We're trying.
Thank you.
Well, I would just respond a little bit to that because I appreciate those words. It's again, I continue to learn about this because this is not something we do every day, but it really is again, going back to my terrible stool analogy, but in the success of getting those funds to make this possible, it is dependent on the interest from the town, the commitment from the town, both I think in this way and in a monetary way, but also the sponsor partner, which is the Lipoli companies, and then of course most importantly really is the nonprofit affordable senior housing developer and their reputation. So it is meaningful, and we also feel a bit of luck, even though we worked really hard to get them interested with others I mentioned, but we feel, I think, really confident that if we can make it work, we can make it work.
And the other thing that came from that meeting, was that we're the number one. We're who they're looking for right now. We're number 3 on their list. They're in Brookline and Stoughton or somewhere, and then it's
Boston,
us.
yeah.
So it's not like there's a big long list, and maybe we'll get into where their focus, and I think that's fantastic.
It's very exciting.
All right, I'm done.
Margaret.
I appreciate seeing all the attention to form-based code, to our bylaw in that regard. I had a couple questions around that. In one of the early diagrams where you showed keep going back. So that overhang, like where that blue car is parked, are those outdoor spaces as well for gathering and whatnot? It's like benches and stuff?
Yeah. Just quickly. So yes, the way in which we've thought about those is, build, and I think you can see some benches in the rendering, but the idea is that up against the glass, which the whole first floor is all very glassy, that is all your resident amenity community space. And so the idea is that we'd kind of put some benches up against that, you'd be under overhangs. And so we've taken those out with some columns at like the edge of the curb, so the entire, sidewalk is covered there, and that we would add some seating. And so similar, what's easier to see at the front, or under the 410 Great Roadside, it's similar in nature to what you're seeing there.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. It really activates the edges, and then the way you have like the different setbacks and whatnot, that's in line with the code and all. I'm curious about, and this is kind of like what Bartlett said with wanting to see the Great Road elevation and the King Street elevation to see what those gables look like. What's happening in that middle section? Is that a flat roof there?
Yeah, we've in order to make this work, there's a lot of equipment that ends up on the roof, so we needed some components of flat roof. So we played with, as we were developing these concepts, we played with whether or not we wanted any peaked roofs in the middle, but then they'd all have to be really fake, so that we had enough room to put the equipment behind them. So, and then honestly, the elevation of the building, I know it's maybe more architectural in nature, but it started to feel a little more, even busier. So we capped the two ends with the gables was the approach, and then kept it a little bit simpler in the middle with the flat roofs and the variety of heights. So you even see at the entry, the parapet height drops down, and so again, those masses. Where's the this is just worth noting, but like there's reveals here. Yeah. Here and here where the roof line actually drops too. So like you'll see like this is a lower roof elevation here than this portion. So so we're putting in variety, and I think what you'll see in that nature is they'll read as much as actual forms instead of just popping in and out. They're also going up and down.
That's great. One question, I pulled up my notes from last time. You had said that parking had expanded from 46 to 102 spaces, and there were 84 units. Now there's 86 units. So has parking increased as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it has. I mean, we're at 100 and.
We're at 95 ratio.
Oh, sorry, we're at 95, right? 1.1 ratio on the 86 units, with the understanding that there'll be a few other spaces that'll be shared with the phase 2 of this project. I mean, assuming this is built right away without phase 2 on for 410 catching up, we'll have plenty of space to create some parking there, and then when that gets developed, we'll have an opportunity to share parking, which I consulted with the town.
While we're on that subject, because it was one of my questions, what does HSL say about parking count? What are they finding?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, they have said 0.75 really is where they maybe a little bit higher for staff, but I mean, really, we are overparked for their use already without getting to 125.
I mean, in fairness, we're in a more suburban location, so.
I think it has more to do, with how many of them just drive, period.
Yeah,
it's the residents, that's
and
where.
And then relating to that, the handicap space number seems low for an elderly unit then? I mean.
It's what we typically do with them. It's following Massachusetts requirements.
Well, I know it's Massachusetts requirements, but this is, that's just a comment, and
I think you'll see a lot more, again, when you get to this is why we have a very big drop-off area in the front, is because I do think that a lot of their residents use transportation services like that.
I was surprised at how few handicap spots were at many of the facilities I visited when I was looking at facilities.
I have no experience with that. Margot, anything else?
I was just curious if you could go back to showing the overhead shot with like the driveways and whatnot. Yeah. With the discussion around a bus going from like here to 550 or from here to the commuter rail, how do you foresee that? What would traffic, or what would that look like?
Thanks for that question, because it is something we have been coordinating with Crosstown Connect, and MRTA and the LRTA system. In particular, we're still at the preliminary stages here, but for this type of use, a Crosstown Connect, a 24-hour call ahead service is something that's would be most beneficial for these type of uses. So that's why we sized that pull-off space the way we did. A full bus stop that an MRTA or LRTA is really more focused on the 550 side,
Okay.
where the Crosstown Connect size is just more applicable for this use.
So, are you done? So while you have this one up, so the other site plan you have, with the white part there shows the road going from 495 all the way down through there. Is that not gonna be discontinued?
Probably, Daryl, you always catch me on when we try to catch up with master plans.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah,
right.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Are you talking about this right here?
Yep.
Yeah, that is a current placeholder, but it does make sense because there's an entry here, and because there's we have also talked about a pump station here and maybe potentially an easement to connect to the sewer up at King Street.
So the concern I have is both between, particularly that one there, if it stays, is that some people trying to use that as a shortcut to avoid the light up at King Street there. And then the same thing would be even on your smaller one there, you have a cut through that you might want to do some kind of road stuff so that it's not amenable to being a cut through.
You're talking about like right like this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or the one all the way from the from the top.
Yep.
So I think you should pay some attention to driving habits. We'll try to use that as a cut through.
Yep.
There. And if you could flip back to the one that you had just before with Margot. That one there. Again, given my own personal experience there, how big of a canopy do you have for getting out of your cars? And so like these recent downpours that we have, it takes a long time sometimes for a senior citizen to go from the car to there. That having as big of a canopy there is something I don't really see that in those pictures there.
Yeah, it's shaded there. So that shading is the canopy for drop off. So that goes out over 10 feet, I would say.
Yeah.
So we bring it basically right to the curb of where we're doing that. And
I just encourage you to have that as big, and maybe even wider, because your entryway goes down a little bit further. I know your door is up at that end, but anyway, you might want to just look at making that canopy as big as you can reasonably make it. And then at the same time, I'm just concerned again, when we have the summer here and there's a lot of pavement here, is whether that really wants to be a grass park down there rather than a paver park, just to cut down some of the heat absorbing areas that are right where, the readily accessible pieces there are gonna be baking zones in the summer. So anyway, they're just feedback from what I saw on the plans.
I appreciate that. For what it's worth on the canopy, I think our initial design didn't have one, Daryl, and then our affordable senior housing partner stepped in and said, no, you gotta have something, and Dave's team jumped on it right away. And so that may get bigger or not, but they are satisfied with this for what it's worth so far.
But if it matched the cutout of the thing there, it'd be a little easier when you're getting out of the car.
That's a permanent structure too. They may want to put a canvas canopy over with their name and all that other stuff on it. Get a real fancy entranceway to it.
Yeah. But anyway, just watching the downpours that we have and then how much paving is there, if you could maybe, I would encourage you to maybe think about whether that should be a green space rather than a paver space.
Yeah. No, but that's a good point. We can sort of think about that and noodle on it. Alex, Chris, I should know this, but is this right out only?
That was my question.
Yeah. So the intent here is that when we go, I mean, we would love for this to be a left hand too, but it just doesn't make sense here. It's intended to be a right in, right out. Right.
Let's leave this up here.
I got one
Yeah,
more.
okay, go ahead.
And then if you flip to the one that had the building profile.
But just to finish that though, right there, that prevents the cut through. I mean, that's a pretty silly cut through to come through here, then you're out in the intersection again anyway, so.
No, if you come off of 495.
I'm saying you're coming here.
Yeah, and you
Right,
cut
yeah,
through
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
Fine.
That's the, and then you avoid the light at the top of the hill.
I would do that.
Yeah, now if you could just flip to the one that had the profile of the building again. And
rendering.
The rendering, there we go. Again, none of my business, but I think it's gonna be yours. Those two valleys dumping onto that flat roof where you got your thing there, you might wanna relook at that.
We're gonna have gutters. We're gonna have
No, but I mean, that's, you know, I have two valleys that come together.
Okay.
In snow and rain,
No, it's
that's gonna just dump right onto your porch there.
I mean, I can just tell you from retail phase one that we've, been progressing, like we've been getting more detailed into how the gutters and the downspouts and whether we have snow guards and all those things, so that's a higher level of detail, but we are considering.
Yeah, I just don't think your downspouts are gonna cover it. Anyway, that's what you gotta worry about,
Yep.
but you might wanna really look at that.
Fair enough.
So I appreciate your effort in this building, which is pretty pragmatic building. At the same time, and I definitely appreciate the sort of heightened parapets that you're using in the flat roofed areas, because nothing is more annoying than just seeing the HVAC. And I presume these will be like split systems, or is this?
We might actually get a central system.
Okay.
We're investigating all of that, and,
Okay.
you know.
Well, if it's a central system, they can be really large, and it's.
Yeah, and we have the available, I think to your point, like the sight lines that we're talking about and the height of those parapets, I think, that's gonna screen it.
To Bartlett's point, I agree. I'd like to see what it looks like from King Street. The extent of the, I don't, I just wanna see what you're thinking about. And when we say from King Street, we're gonna be seeing it behind the existing buildings on King Street.
Yeah, we didn't do that because then we'd have to model all those, but we can.
I know, I'm
And,
just saying, we'd like to, I think it's worth it. Now, let's go back to the site plan, the landscape plan. I think, you're getting this going. I think that, like some other comments, this space along Great Road, which is great, especially because it's not gonna be flat, it's gonna be, hilly, or there's gonna be some grade there. I agree, because everyone in this room who lives here has spent half their life waiting at the light on Great Road to enter the common. This is not a good place to hang out. It's just not. And so you have some, I just think, let's think about it some more.
Are you suggesting buffering elements?
Well, I love the idea of showing activity, but it might be sort of at the corner where your loop is, or something that's removed from next to the road. That's my opinion. The other thing is about the sidewalk. I understand the sidewalk alongside the existing, what we used to call the Conan store, has to be right along the road, but I would consider at some point shifting it in from the curb, because there will be cars there almost 100% of the time idling. And so I guess my overall comment is, let's brainstorm a little bit on that thing, because it could be fantastic. It is fantastic with the situation where you have a single car there, but there's never a single car there. In fact, it goes way beyond there. In fact, you may not even be able to make an easy left-hand turn. Right-hand turn out of the thing. And the other thing is, in terms of the overall site plan, the cut-through thing is interesting. you know, possibly may be dealing with that in the other side of Great Road. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but in this case it would be bad because it's a senior housing complex and we don't need to introduce a lot. So I don't have the answer, but it's worth thinking about. And then I just had a question for Morgan. What's the sewer situation?
Yep, so we have been in active conversations with LELWD, with Nick Lawler, and we've all acknowledged that we need to make a formal request to transfer capacity over for this phase from 550. And that involves likely a pump station here that could be covered through some of our MassWorks grants that we've been working on. We actually had it in a previous submission, but have pushed that to later this year, next year. And then hooking in on King Street right here.
Okay.
Through the way.
Okay, so next, who here would like to have comments? Mark.
Mark Grambacher, 205 Hartwell. First, thank you for bringing the affordable housing. I think this is all great. Most of my comments are a little minor. Some of them are a little more. I'm a little concerned about the entrance there being right across basically from your 550 entrance. You're going to have people that are going to make a right turn and try and make an immediate left. Out of those two, that's going to be confusing. I don't know how these entrances jive with what the state report said, where they wanted you to come out basically at the 495 light. I don't know what the plan is for doing that, because you took that off of this immediate plan, and I thought that was one of the things you were supposed to have to do as an initial stage. That's one comment. Another is your path there for walking doesn't have, you have steps down to get to down right by this, right at the end of the building. You need an ADA way to get down. Other than, well, that's awfully steep. I don't know if that sidewalk is an ADA grade. So you might have to check that. If you go back to the building, your porch patio, whatever you want to call it, there on the 4th floor, there. I question whether you might want that on the back of the building rather than the front of the building, because that's right over 495. I don't know how loud that will be up there versus if you made it on the other side. It would also be helpful, I don't know, the way you show this now behind the building, it looks wide open, like you can see for miles behind it, but you can't. There's buildings right there. So it's kind of deceiving in this view that it looks like, you know, you can see for miles off in the, but you're not. You're going to be really close packed. So something, just a view that shows where those buildings are on one of your renderings. I know you don't want to render it in detail, but just like we can put them in. Relative heights and things and relative views would be helpful. So, but my main the bigger concern is those two driveways are really close. You're going to have problems for entrance and exit. So,
George. George, you should take Morgan's seat at the next meeting so that we can compress the time.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I'm gonna take a little bit of a different approach here. I talked to Sal and he was planning on being here. He told me for this
anniversary
lunch. Lunch. But this is his 32nd anniversary, so he took his bride to wherever they met, wherever he proposed, or whatever the case is. That's where he's at. Actually, he took time to call me this afternoon. But anyway, what I want to say is that this is a project that the governor is also looking down on, and with Littleton getting everything in line to get up there and get this money first in line up there. I know that they got a couple other big projects going on, but the main thing is to get this thing in in position where we can get this in. And this is his baby. Sal is wanting to do this for the seniors here in Littleton. And I told them that if they couldn't come out here to the meeting, that they could watch it on LCTV. And I hope a lot of them are watching this on LCTV. This is important. This is a very, very important project here in the town of Littleton. This is the first time that we're really going to get something that is going to benefit some needy people in this community, and that is our seniors. They'll always last at, getting what they need, but he's putting this on front because it was said, and this is what Sal said to me, he said, it was said that this is going to be 7 or 8 years down the road before we get this house. He says, no, I decided that I'm going to put it up front. And you're going to see that it's going to be put on at the same time that we're starting to work over at 550. So I said, well, that's great. And you're going to prove a lot of people wrong saying it's going to be 7 or 8 years down the road before we see this. So it's very important that this honorable body here gives the Napoli company what they need to prepare the paperwork and get it up at the State House where they can get the funding for this project along with the other partners that they have in this project. And I think that we have a golden opportunity here to provide quality housing here for seniors in the town of Littleton. And I look forward to us helping him to launch this and get shovels in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Marianne.
Hello. Marianne here, Whitetail Way Affordable Housing Trust. Just reiterating what I said last time, we're fully on board as the Affordable Housing Trust behind this project. I think we are really fortunate to have the partnership that Napoli has with HSL and fully support moving forward. If we can look at the design overview for 1 second. A lot of us I know in this room have had the chance to look at different senior housing facilities for family members, and I was really happy to see in this view all of the windows, especially in the gallery area. I think when you're looking at places, first impressions matter, and having a lot of natural lighting is really important, so I was really happy to see that. I think the building looks great, and we're just super excited to move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I would like to, address these comments and on behalf of the board, and I think our board is completely aligned with, moving this forward as fast as we can. But that's the actual movement isn't in our purview. It's, we want to do whatever we can to support it. For that matter, we have opened a hearing for the site plan and stormwater review. We do site plan review also, because this is in form-based code, reflects that. We've had comments, I think we've all commented on the building. And in general, what we've commented on tonight are details and quibbles, and the general outcome is really heartening. And if it can get going, that's, great. Maren, what is the status of peer review?
So we do have the cost estimates that came in today, just forwarded those. Green is able to start the review under an old contract because they have a few hours left on a prior review. So we'll get that started while we're doing the paperwork, contracting, and all that. So that will get underway right away.
I had one comment that I didn't get to, and that was just you're gonna have to tear down the entire mill to do this, which will leave, and we've, this has happened in some of the other phases. What is it gonna look like after you tear down the mill?
Better.
Yeah. mean, it will, I mean, Gary, I don't know if you have a thought on this, but it's gonna be graded and, I mean, obviously there'll be some construction fencing around this side of it, but the bulk of phase two, if I can go to that, you know, this is already sort of as is now, the mill is all up here, so it will be sort of, it's a parking lot now, I don't think a lot of that will remain and be used for, staging and construction. But I think it probably will look better.
So this being said, we are going to continue this public hearing to August 6th. What time do we want to do it? 7:15 again, or what are we doing beforehand?
That's what we had, 7:15.
Okay. Can I have a motion to
Make a motion to continue the public hearing on 10 Great Road to August 6th at 7:15.
Second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now,
I was gonna just add one, I looked at the, they had the waivers in their thing there, I didn't see any showstoppers in their waiver request either, I just wanna signal that, you know,
I appreciate the waiver narrative. We sort of assume with a building like this that it's not going to be a little villagey, you know, thing. But I think the board appreciates the fact that you went to the effort to, you know, to not justify, but to explain.
And I was just being bold to say, I didn't see showstoppers in the waivers, just in terms of like.
That took effort too, but we
Because
tried.
if we had any showstoppers, I think I would have tried to bring them up tonight.
And we all had a.
Yeah.
That's great.
Next, we are, okay, you wanna read the verbiage?
There you go, public hearing, stormwater management permit, site plan 550 King Street retail, phase 2, north and south. Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, July 9, 2026 at 7:35 p.m. in multi-purpose room 1 in the center of Shattuck at 33 Shattuck Street to consider stormwater management permit applications under chapter 38 of the Code of Littleton and site plan review under Littleton zoning bylaws section 173, article 31. Property 550 King Street, assessors map U8 10-1, U86070. U8 -10 through 24 south. Applicant 550 King Street LLC. Owner it was 550 King Street LLC. Applicant TEC Inc. on behalf of property owner. Retail phase 2 north development proposes the construction of a 23,000 square foot commercial retail building with associated grading, parking, pedestrian access, underground utilities, site lighting, and stormwater improvements throughout the site. The retail phase 2 south development project proposes one new building with 5,917 square feet of commercial/retail use and relocation of the telehouse. And it tells again where to see applications and plans and to provide a comment. Signed Margot Lucy, clerk.
Okay, you're up.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board for having me this evening. My name is Chris Raymond from TEC. I'm excited to be able to present tonight on retail phase 2. We're going to start with the retail phase 2 north development. But actually, before I do that, I do just want to jump in and kind of give an update on where we are with the infrastructure projects that have been going on out there for the last couple of years, allowing us to actually be here tonight to present some of these projects before you. So currently we have 3 phases of infrastructure that are ongoing, I'll call it, but we have phase 1 infrastructure in which is shown here in green, and phase 2 infrastructure project that is shown in the cyan color leading towards Great Road. Just recently, over the last month or so, those projects have been completed, which installed crucial infrastructure to be able to actually support the developments that we've presented to you guys. So these have been awesome projects that we've been able to work on in collaboration with
with the town and with the state. And we are currently in design of what's highlighted here in red, and that's the phase 3 infrastructure project. And you can just see the proximity of these infrastructure projects and the location of the development phases that we've presented to you. You can see where residential phase 1 is located, as well as, I have a laser pointer. Residential phase 1 is located, and then our approved retail phase 1 development in green, town green development, all supported by this crucial infrastructure, and that includes the proposed retail phase 2 that we're going to discuss tonight. So in proposed retail phase 2, we've split it up into 2 parts. We have the north development and the south development. North development you can see here highlighted in blue, and the south development you can see highlighted in red. So we're going to dive into the north development. And for this development, we're proposing an anchor retail tenant. This is going to be a 1-story commercial retail building, roughly 23,500 square feet in size. And you'll see after many iterations of looking at how we can make a retail tenant work on this site, we've landed on this layout here. We've spent many early mornings and late nights, thank you Morgan and Gary, trying to really massage this plan to make everything work from both a tenant perspective, customer perspective, and infrastructure perspective. So the site here is comprised of a single retail building centrally located, and we've situated all primary customer parking in the front of the building, and this is enhanced by landscape islands, pedestrian improvements, and ADA accessibility to really allow a central customer corridor, I'll call it, to and from the building, allowing safe passage for customers to get to the building and back to their cars. And as part of this layout, we've kind of created what I'll call a ring road here with 2 points of access onto the proposed infrastructure. This is the central boulevard running through the site. So we have 2 points of access here, and this was kind of created to allow truck and loading traffic to be able to circulate the building away from the customers, so that they can feel safe when they're parking and loading and going to and from the building. So as part of this design, we've also situated loading and dumpster operations to the rear of the building so it's out of sight. And we've also incorporated a nice landscape buffer, and you can't really see here, but we are proposing a fence along this boundary here to just screen this from the residential face of the project, which are located kind of planned north. So just diving into some of the technical aspects of this. This site is existing today. It's a big parking lot. I'm sure you guys have been out there. It's a big paved parking lot. And the grading actually slopes plan north here down to plan south. So to kind of counteract this so that we can create a nice level path to be able to build a building here, we're proposing a retaining wall along this boundary, highlighted in green. That's going to allow us to pick up some of that grade, flatten out the site, and make a much more comfortable retail pad here. So along with that, we've also we're proposing a severely upgraded stormwater treatment system, where you can see that all highlighted in blue. That is comprised of some deep sunk catch basins to pre-treat stormwater runoff. Those are all directed into, you can see these yellow areas here, some water quality units for further treatment before being directed into a subsurface stormwater system below the parking area to allow that stormwater to infiltrate with any additional stormwater being directed down through this pipe and out. And actually, the pipe here is an existing stormwater outlet that we're looking to tie into. with much cleaner stormwater after being treated and flows reduced. Looking at some of the utilities on site, as I mentioned earlier, as part of the phase 2 infrastructure project, we're able to install some of the crucial infrastructure to be able to support this development. So you'll see a lot of the utilities here being directed towards the front of the site along the boulevard, where we can tie into recently installed infrastructure for water, sewer, electric, and the like. So with that, I actually want to jump over to, we'll move south a little bit, and we're going to talk about retail phase 2 south. So we're excited to present this portion of the development because it does finally answer the question that we've received so many times. What are you guys going to do with the Tuttle House? We have an answer, and that answer comes from a lot of feedback that we've gained from multiple members of this board and the community, is relocating the Tuttle House into this corner here. This is the closest possible spot for the Tuttle House to be in proximity to the town common. So this really acts as like a gateway into this new project, while paying respect to the history of the site and to Littleton's downtown. And I know many members of you have offered up this idea, and we listened and we really tried to make it happen. So we are excited to finally give you that answer. So we're looking to situate the Tuttle House in this corner here, and then we kind of, once we do that, we are kind of left with this weird kind of awkward L-shaped lot. So we did multiple iterations of what to do with the remainder of this site, and after, there wasn't a whole lot of room for like a substantial building here, but what did fit nicely was a bank. So we're proposing a bank at the northern portion of the southern portion of this site, and so that it's situated along the central boulevard. The site will be accessed by, there's 2 driveway locations along the boulevard, and then we have 1 driveway location along King Street. And this driveway location here actually will be consolidating 3, in the existing condition. If you were to go out there today, there's actually 3 access points right here, and we're looking to consolidate those down to 1. And the site entrance here, we've actually designed similar to what we did in retail phase 1, is we've pulled the parking back into the site a little bit, allowing safe access for vehicles coming in and out of the site, as well as the ability for cars to adequately park, and not have any conflicts with incoming traffic and cars parking. It also allows a great opportunity for us to enhance some landscaping along the driveway and entrance to this site. The remainder of the site, we've been filled with as much parking as we could fit in here, as well as pedestrian and landscaping improvements. And you can see this isn't to scale here. You can see we kind of have this break line so that we could show you how it kind of lines up with the town town green or the park or whatever we're going to call it. So you can see we have pedestrian access from both of these sites. There will be a continued pedestrian corridor that will be able to walk straight into the green. So with that, dive into the technical aspects of this site, and similar to the north site, we're looking to install an updated stormwater system that includes deep sump catch basins directed into a water quality unit before hitting an infiltration basin and being outletted actually into the same system that was shown on retail phase 2 north. And also similarly with the utilities, because of the utility infrastructure that we've been able to install as part of the phase 2 infrastructure project, we'll be tying these buildings into that infrastructure to the north of the site here. And we have been able to start some discussions with LELWD on how we support these two buildings. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave to talk about some architecture.
So, here on this bank building, a sliver of this part of the parcel is in the form-based code area. So again, we're trying to pull from a lot of the tools that we've used in other parts of the site, working with the primary masses, offsets, and creating a palette that is not too many different colors. One thing I want to just point out is that because of the location of the site for this bank, it is oriented towards Great Road and or Entry Boulevard. So, a lot of the articulation, the primary entries, all acknowledging that this new site entrance is really what it is fronting on. So, we've put a lot of articulation on the end of this, which faces Great Road, and the primary entrance here along the boulevard. And so just wanted to flag that's how we're orienting it rather than orienting it towards King Street, which it's obviously very far removed from. Other than that, very similar tactics used at other buildings in the retail village with traditional New England materials, the sloping roofs. This one has some brick on it, and we're still doing things like the projecting storefronts here, integrating some canopies at the main entrance, and trying to make this fit with the rest of the development. The other thing I would just say is that we are working very closely with some prototype plans from the bank that we're trying to lease this to, and so a lot of these moves, we're trying to blend between what they have for functional requirements about how this thing works, and where we need to enter, and we've flipped and mirrored and rotated and mushed it around and get it to really do as much of the things that we can do for the form-based code, while also delivering on what the functional requirements have to be. So I will leave it at that. Just to note that we think we're still doing a lot of the same things that we're trying to do in the other buildings, and this one has some red on it.
We don't have a lot of good slides for this, but we did want to speak to the tunnel house. Chris already touched on it, but I wanted to provide this just a visual for the board here where it currently is and where we're looking to slide it to. And it will look something like this, but this is of course just the current view as a reminder. Don't want to understate about the importance of this move and being able to preserve this building. Looking to hand it over to for questions, comments, but I did want to just go back quickly, if I could, to this anchor tenant layout, because we met with the board last month and certainly heard some feedback, and we as a team went back and we looked at different configurations here, given some of the feedback from board members, and Chris spoke to some of this, but I wanted to just reiterate it, which is we also reached out to the tenant that we're really courting for this site, and you've heard me say it so many times, the importance of having them as an anchor tenant. Chris talked about the flow, the delivery, the loading, the screening, the orientation towards the residential, the public safety element. They when we approached them again saying, could you twist this, could you move it up? Some of their initial immediate feedback was our trucks really benefit from circling the building instead of cutting it in front of it. So if we had turned this up this way and we had trucks cutting in front of the main entrance, it's just a public safety hazard. It's an operational negative for them, for their customer experience. And then the other thing they mentioned is customers need to see an obvious place. Where am I going to park, and where am I going in, and how am I leaving? And by tucking the parking behind the building, it creates confusion they have found in other locations when they've tried that. But more importantly, is our team kind of chewed on the feedback from the board. We realized, somewhat intentionally, somewhat not, that we the parking here is actually really enticing for the rest of the project as well because of its proximity. And what's not really shown in this updated rendering, we wanted to give you this view because it does feel like it's part of the other retail village. But because of its size and scale, it does make sense to be a little bit set back. But right here is where that bank will go. It's right off screen here. And we can maybe update that if we need to show the board the context of this. But there's a world where after hours or even during shopping, someone parks their car here and then just walks the 25 feet over to get to the rest of, to go to the bank or go into one of the restaurants there that we're building here, or take, have coffee in the King Street Green. This parking is beneficial to the overall project as well. So I just wanted the board to feel like we heard you. We've really looked at what this could be in another way, but really it comes back to this is the best layout to have a tenant be successful here, but also all the other reasons, the safety, the connectivity to the rest of the campus. So that's why you see what you see today.
Can you flip back to that rendering again? One of the people, that one. So I didn't notice it until it became prominent here, is you show the crosswalks down the boulevard, but if you parked over in the parking there, what's your walk path across the boulevard?
It's right here. There's a planned prominent piece sidewalk right here.
So there would be a crosswalk there?
Yeah, it's very prominent. This is our renderings are very illustrative, Daryl, and I apologize that they're not all literal, but it's right here.
Yeah. Okay, I just look around the corner.
You had some kind of walk along the parking and along the property line.
Yeah. I think this is the real function here, and then there's sidewalks that come across here. It's
a crosswalk up
there.
there.
You can see it right there. It's a little offset. Okay. This is accurate. Whereas the
okay, so let's I appreciate your comments about, because we did give you feedback on this building, which didn't alter it very much, and I appreciate you acknowledging that that you did work with our comments and ultimately it didn't work out. Whatever. So anyway, I'm gonna go down the board again, Bartlett.
Well, I guess I was the most critical of having the parking lot next to the rendering. Does look like it makes some sense. So, with your explanation of the trucks and the psychology of people going to grocery stores, I'll accept it the way it is. I'm a little bit nervous about the division between the store and the apartment building. I mean, that apartment building isn't defined yet, but I just don't know how that. I mean, how pervious or impervious is that going to be? That dotted line doesn't tell me much about.
In terms of a buffer, you mean, or
yeah. I mean, you don't want people going back, walking back into the loading dock.
Right.
But so anyhow, I mean, that's just
it's definitely a consideration as we
advance that. There needs to be some kind of transition between the apartment building and the parking lot.
Yeah, we're working through that design, but that definitely was something will be important for both this group here and of course the residents.
I mean, you could do it if the apartment's low from the other side, and that's the back, and you have a fence in the backyard for the ground floor. That could work.
There's topography there as well, Bartlett too, so it might be sitting above, but that is thankfully we have Dave and his team to help us with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with the partial plans, I get it, but sorry, I didn't mean to jump on top of you. But as you
wait out here.
But it ties in only because when you build that second, build 500 or whatever it is, now you've got an existing building there that you got to make sure that it didn't disrupt what you were going to have for views on that building.
Sure.
Bartlett, are
Sorry.
you
I-
done?
I-
Okay, Mark.
I was hoping I was next, like maybe way down here with Marco. Can you go back to the first? No, the other one. I think it's great that you've got it so that it's walkable. This whole thing is supposed to be walkable. You park there, you wanna walk to the bank, you wanna walk over and have a coffee, or go have something to eat, you don't have to keep moving your car around. I think it'd be really cool, and this picture right here, could you superimpose the Beatles walking across that? That would really make it stick out.
It'd be Mary and Mike, Sal Jr. would be perfect.
Well, I'll take that, but I think the Beatles would have been cool if you did. But that's it. No, I just think the layout, I like the layout. We all know it's a Sprouts. We all know there's a food component of a smaller specialty supermarket going in there. Probably great for all the residents that are going to be there and people that are going to shop there. I think it fits. I think it actually fits nicely. Thank you. I'm done now on this end.
Okay, Margot.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said about like, nope. I appreciate what you said about going back to the prospective tenant and talking about how the building is sited. And I know like Bartlett had raised that issue last time. I think if I can quote you, he had also said, it looks like a standard suburban mall and Littleton is not. And I think I had called it a Circuit City like beige box. And I looked at the like spec sheet, sample sheet. Yeah, the elevations that you had submitted with like colors and materials. I'm still getting Circuit City. And I understand it is outside, immediately outside of our form-based code. I love that with the bank, you're like, hey, we need to bridge that a little bit. This is not so far outside of the form-based code. And I think bringing in elements that can speak to it minimally while not compromising the space on the inside. I mean, yeah, maybe you don't play with setbacks or something like that, but I think doing something because this is, it's another kind of front door to the development and needs to feel more welcoming than that. Now, obviously, there will be signage on it now eventually, but I think giving it more of a face, both from this side as well as the side that is facing out to the street, would be great. I think last time, like Daryl mentioned, maybe you could incorporate a facade so that we're not compromising on the interior needs for the tenant, but also making it more engaging for residents. That would be terrific, because I think, yeah, we don't want to get in the way of the conversations that you're having with tenants, but we are all accountable to residents and want to make sure that we're meeting those needs as well, and something that can kind of bridge the aesthetics set by form-based code and everything else going on would be really great.
Yeah, I mean, we agree on, especially on this side, it's important for us and the plan. I mean, one of the things we were talking about as a group is, you know, do we commission a mural for that side? So to your point, we're not compromising the functionality of the building, but creating something that's maybe more compelling or interesting there, introducing some.
And I think I'm facing like Great Road too.
Sure.
It'll
I don't
be
know how
visible
visible that
from
will be,
there.
but yeah.
It'll be visible on this facade as well. And also I wanted to ask, so last time around, I thought that you had shown some on-street parking for this little boulevard going through as well, like 3 or 4 spots there.
It's still shown on your.
Are those still there?
Yeah, you see there's 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we do still have
And on
those,
the other
okay.
side too.
Yep.
Okay. And then I was also just curious, what other types of tenants did you explore beyond a bank? And I'm asking that because, again, based on what we hear from residents, with the addition of a bank there, it'll make for 7 banks within a half-mile radius.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is we have talked to every possible tenant, and not necessarily for that space, but the banks are unique in that they are okay on a standalone, and whereas some of these other users, whether it's they want to be part of the heart or the beating heart of all the village that you have, and so it's a bit of a Goldilocks situation where they're okay with this, and they you know, if they need that, if they like that drive-through. It's a really, as we've seen, banks have evolved to having these drive-throughs.
But you're not showing a drive-through on the site plan.
There is. It's fairly subtle, but and I don't know because of this projection, but it's through here. That's the.
Oh, I see. It just has it's
yeah,
not a canopy.
It shows up better here, Jeff, if you look at that. Just you can see some arrows.
And Margot, to go on to Morgan's point too, and for the board as well, because of that awkward L shape, you can only fit so many different types of buildings in there, and that's more of a little jewel box, but also we didn't want the front of the entrance of this site to be just a huge parking lot, something that was kind of small and quaint. And the biggest piece is kind of the financial part that this supports too. So it was a really good question, but that's kind of how we backed into this ultimately.
So while I apologize, Daryl, but while we have this slide up, I think you also need to consider the cut through on this also from King Street to Great Road to avoid the, I don't know what to tell you, but I think that people would find that as a way to avoid that light. Which only is a problem during certain times of the afternoon. But I just think it needs some consideration.
Speed bumps.
Yeah, or like traffic calming.
Or no left-hand turn up at the end.
Yeah, we have speed bumps in our Riverwalk campus as well. Not necessarily for that reason, but so we have that experience. And also, today we obviously see people cutting through as we speak. But when this is better configured and professionally managed, I think that's I have a little more confidence. But we certainly hear that comment, and we need to give it some thought. It's not in our interest to have that.
Okay, Daryl.
Oh, I jumped on top of Mark. I'm over.
Okay. So my questions were the bank drive-through. I'm glad you don't have a canopy. The drive-through from King Street to Great Road. And the other question I have, and this is off the site, there's a large area now between the retail and the intersection of Great Road and 495, which is now, there's a big, I guess it's a drainage structure. There's it's sort of wild. It's got some willow. But it's also hugely overtaken by invasive species. So what's your image there? Are you going to manicure that? Are you going to just let it go, or what's the intention?
Yeah, we would definitely go in and clean it up. One of the things that we had Phase 2 North development was tying into some of the infrastructure that drains that way. When we go in there, we're actually planning to replace that pipe, make sure that it's up to speed and working well, as well as clear out any invasive vegetation and really maintain it. It has definitely not been maintained for a little while.
It's been
so we'd go in there, clean out some of the invasives, update the infrastructure that's there, and then there would probably be a more appropriate maintenance program that would go along with that.
Okay.
And just so you know, as part of this, because we do impact that area, we are going in front of conservation in a couple of weeks to present this to them, just for those minor impacts there.
So those are my comments. Maren, okay, now's the time. Is anyone else would like to speak to this, George?
Oh, no, I was just.
Okay.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. First and foremost, I want to commend that team of engineers for the job that they've been doing with these buildings and redesign based on comments that's been given to you. I really appreciate that. And I tell you, I appreciate the most that when they went in and when I wrote the cell about flipping the doors from the back to the front on King Street, which was one of the things that we had looked forward to being. And he said, well, I did one better, George. I put it on both sides. So I really appreciate the work that y'all put in on this. The main thing that I want to talk about here is that a lot of people never knew that taxpayers was paying the tax on 550 King Street, even though we had someone that bought it. But the assessment is up like about 41 million. It has to reach 60 million before taxpayers will stop paying taxes to the town for 550 King Street. So you can understand as a taxpayer why it's so important that the digging or putting foundations in the ground and putting buildings up mean that the assessors can get in and they can evaluate and they can increase the assessment on the taxes of that property and get us out of the business of paying taxes on the property. That is very important. A lot of people in this town did not know that we've been paying taxes on that ever since IBM left town. So it's been quite a while. So I'm hoping that there'll be a smooth sailing with going forth here with these buildings and with the blessing of this board here to give them the approval to go ahead and put these buildings up there so that we can get this project up and going. And I appreciate everything that this board has done in terms of helping this development. And I think we have a very good developer here in this town because he has listened to this board as well as listened to residents in this town, and he wants to do well in this community. As far as I'm concerned, as of right now, he's done nothing but well in this community. And I thank him for what he's done, and I look forward to us supporting him so that he can get these buildings up and I can get the town a little bit out of my pocket. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mark?
Mark Rambacher, 205 Hartwell. One comment on the bank with the drive-through. You need to do a much better job on the driveway because it's not separated. It's not clear. There's not like a pull-off lane for it. So it needs to be somehow separated from the rest of the traffic, or you're going to, it's just part of the main, there needs to be the island or something, right? And then on the retail building, I have more of a comment for the planning board. The site plan that was approved in 2024 for the site had basically 2 apartment buildings in that site building, and they were M&N, which was about 400 units. This is taking up part of the site, part of the space for those units. I hope that the building 500, when it comes in, makes up for it. We've increased the retail commercial use of this building at the cost the site at the cost of the residential, and I hope we recover it and later in the phase. I'm not opposed to this project that's going in, but I mean, the plan as was presented had 400 apartments there, and right now you have the building 500 in it. I don't know how you get 5. I don't know how we recover those apartments in this plan versus what was originally proposed.
Morgan, you've talked to that.
I would just appreciate it, Mark. I would just say, absolutely, we're looking to do residential here, and we are also looking at other parts of the property to make up for that residential. So this was not supposed to be residential over here, but it's a very good site for that. So we're looking at it right now. It's not a done deal, but give you some comfort.
What's the concept for building? What is it, 1,000?
That's likely going to be complementary retail because of right on the green there.
Proximity.
Okay.
Keeping with the form-based code as well, the smaller buildings.
Do you have a schedule about coming before us for that phase?
Honestly, it's going to be as soon as possible. We just as soon as Dave finished with some of this, we got him going on some of the designs for those buildings. So my hope is honestly within this summer. Our intent is this summer.
No summer for Dave, okay.
Yeah, Dave. Dave's already.
I already had my vacation.
So next month.
Yeah.
So this, I'm now gonna ask the board to continue to prove whether or not we can continue this hearing to, what would we continue it to?
August 6th at 7.
Will you have, well,
Do you wanna do this before or
after, and I think, but also will there be, I guess we can just fully continue it because maybe we do this at the last. Because if we don't have peer review back, well,
that's what we're pushing out.
Right.
We should be time for back and forth.
okay. So what would be the time and date?
So if we do like 7:40, 7:30?
So it would be continued to the August 6th meeting at 7:40. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to continue the public hearing for 550 King Street site plan postpone letter permit to August 6th at 7:40.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now the next order of business is adjourning.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Get my shirt on.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone.